Hi, sixth grade students and parents. I'm Mrs. Frederick. I teach art at Van Hoosen, and I am your students' art teacher this semester. So I'd like to welcome you to Curriculum Night. Thanks so much for being here. And I'll tell you a little bit about myself first. This is my 13th year teaching. I taught 6 years of high school art before I came to Van Hoosen Middle School, which is now my home. I just love teaching your middle school students. We have a really great time together and it's a great experience. I received my studio art education degree from Oakland University. And yeah, just love teaching it all. All of your students will get to paint and draw and sculpt and work with clay. And that's what I think is most fun about middle school art is that they just get to experience a lot of different mediums and really get to find what they like. I told your students the first day, even if this elective wasn't your first choice, or maybe even your second, or maybe even your third, fourth, or fifth, they'll find something that they really enjoy doing in class as I give them a lot of different choices and chances to create. So I'm going to share my screen here in a second, and I'm going to share with you your students' Google Classroom, where I put pretty much anything that I show them in class. So sometimes I'll even record demonstrations and put those on Google Classroom. I told your students today, if I ever have to, like emergency, be absent, I always put something on Google Classroom so they can kind of keep going. And it's really a hub for information. So let me share my screen with you. Okay. So here's Google Classroom, and this just says Art 6, first hour. You might be a different hour, but that's okay. It's all the same information. And you're probably familiar with Google Classroom at this point. Right now I've got right here the class expectations and syllabus. We just got finished working on personal name cards. We're kind of moving into something else, but these are the things that we've done so far. So if we click on here, I'll just briefly do my classroom expectations first that I shared with your students also. It's on my door as you enter and exit the art room. But this is really important that your students bring a sketchbook and a pencil, something to write with every single day. And obviously I always have extra drawing paper and things to write with if they forget it, but that just helps keep them nice and organized and start their day. When your students walk into the art room, we start our first 5 or so minutes together doing their sketch a day. And they might have told you about that too. They received a little piece of paper from me for September, and it just lists a word. Sometimes it's an adjective, sometimes it's a noun, usually a noun. And whatever pops in their head first, they just take 5 minutes, they open up their sketchbook, and they just do their sketch a day. I told them too, it doesn't have to be, the best work of art they've ever done. It just needs to be about 5 minutes of effort. So I also suggested to your students that they do their sketch a days for the week just on one page. That way they're not spending too much time taking up one whole sketchbook page per week. And on Fridays or the end of the week, I check them in and give them sketchbook points for that. And we'll talk about the grade book and grading in a minute too. But this number one is important to be prepared. We also do a lot of what's called media study, where we practice different materials or mediums that we'll be using for the projects in their sketchbook. So they get a little chance to practice it first instead of going for it right on the project. The second one is really important too, that we practice respect for each other, for art materials, and for our workspace. I have a little classroom clipboard to sign out if they ever have to leave the classroom. They just kind of have to let me know where they're going, and then they sign in and out. Food gets tricky in the art room, so I like them to, if they need water, that's okay. Obviously, there's different circumstances for different students, but for the most part, just water. Phones and lockers, they know this too. Obviously, special circumstances, but the office is always really good about contacting parents and guardians if your students need to reach them right away. And then we practice a lot these past couple weeks about cleaning up and leaving the classroom the same as or better even than it was before. And then let's take a look at the syllabus really quick. I'm not going to read it word for word, but there is some really good stuff in here if you want to look at it later, if your student logs onto their Google Classroom, and you can kind of breeze through it. But I love this first quote by Elliot Eisner. He's an art educator and an art professor. The arts enable us to have an experience we can have from no other source, and through such an experience to discover the range and variety of what we are capable of feeling. I do so much more than just teach your students how to paint or how to mix color or how to make a little clay creature. I'm really trying to get them to use their brains in a different way, to express themselves. I tell my students all the time, the art room should be a place where you walk in and you just take a breath and let everything else kind of fall off that has happened during the day. If it's good or bad, whatever it is, you're in here and you're using your brain a little bit differently than you would in your other classes. And you're just able to really get a chance to show who you are and express those feelings. Have fun, talk to a friend. Yeah. Okay, so why is art so important? Your student is in the class, so I hope that you value it as much as I do. But this talks just a little bit about like their sense of identity and understanding the world. I give them lots of different, like I said, art materials to work with, but we also talk about artists and different ways of creating and expressing ourselves. And this kind of talks about that too, a variety of mediums. And then we move on to the course aims and objectives. I'm not going to read through this whole thing either because I think I'm getting short on time here. But these italicized words, understand, appreciate, reflective, communicate, those words are all skills that we build in the art classroom. Self-confidence, self-awareness, learners, inquirers, thinkers, all those fabulous 21st century skills that your students are building in this classroom. And let's move to attendance or later missing work. We do all the work in the classroom. I rarely ever send students home with homework. And if I do, it's kind of like, hey, grab something that you want to press into your clay from home or something like that. It's usually not art making at home because that's kind of hard to do with all the supplies that I have in the classroom. Assessment, though, I said I would talk about this because I said that your students' sketch-a-days are worth sketchbook points in the gradebook every week. So I grade using rubrics, which you're probably familiar with. If you're not, a rubric is just a really nice goal-based way to assess your students' learning. And I tell the students too, you never have to worry about me grading your art project based on what somebody else's looks like. Like, oh, this one's the best in the classroom, so everybody's has to look like that. Or, I think this one is the best, so everybody has to look like that. That's not, I don't grade on good or pretty ever. It's more of like a set standard of goals that your students can achieve. And I talk to them about tangible goals too. They're not goals that are like subjective or things that somebody could interpret differently. It would be a goal, for example, on our very first project, big project, we do color wheel people where we learn how to color mix. So we use 3 colors to color mix, all 12 colors of the color wheel. And one of the goals for that project is each one of your pieces of painting a different color. Like, did you mix sufficiently so that you can see 12 different colors? And that's a tangible goal. I also grade it based on these 4 standards. Each project will have a different standard that I grade upon, although in 6th grade art, a lot of what we're doing is developing those introductory skills. So a lot of their rubrics, if they bring them home and show you, which I hope they do, will say standard B, developing skills. And really all of these could be in every single project we do, but I like to focus and hone in on just one. It kind of helps the kids focus as well. So their projects in class are worth 70% of their grade. And then their sketchbook work is worth 30% of their grade. So when I give them those sketchbook points, or when I give them credit for doing that media study in class in their sketchbooks, that's a smaller chunk of their grade than the projects. And a 6th grade art also is important to know that it's an S or a U, so a satisfactory or an unsatisfactory, and all of your students will be just fine. They will achieve that S. You'll see that grade breakdown in synergy. And while I'm saying that all of your students are going to do great, I tell them this as well the first couple of days of class. As long as you are working to the best of your ability every day, you're using your class time well, and you're getting your work done, everybody's going to be just fine grade-wise. And lastly, this is my contact information. The best way to reach me during the school day is email. I'm always kind of walking around the room and helping kids. getting materials out, doing demonstrations, but my computer is kind of always open and on my desk, and I take attendance every hour. So I at least will see an email every hour. And then if something's really urgent, obviously call the main office. They can always contact me. And then my conference hour is third hour. So I can check emails really quickly during that third hour time block right here too. And that is about it for information for the class. I look forward to having a really great semester with your students. If you ever need anything, please reach out. And it was nice to be with you this evening.